So, hello, I am Pranav from Team 23214, the BetaBots. So, welcome to our speaker series, where we interview people who've contributed to the field of robotics. So, today's theme is Robotics Startup Garage, turning your idea into a product. So, I'm here with Erik Ma, first alumni, CTO, and co-founder of BWTlink. Erik, can you tell us more about yourself?
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, like you mentioned, my name's Eric. Spent 3 years or so in first, mostly in FTC, but a little bit of time in FRC as well. So if you're aware of FTC Team 18225 High Definition, that was something that my co-founder and I put together. So I feel like I have not that long of an experience in robotics in the world of first per se, but I feel like we made good use of our time for the most part in that area. Now entering my senior year of college at UC Berkeley. I'm studying electrical engineering, computer science. So kind of continuing what I learned in robotics and really taking it to the next stage of my career. But yeah, really excited to talk to you today and really happy to have the opportunity to be here.
So, I have a question to ask. So, what first got you interested in robotics?
Yeah, 100%. I guess like I've always really liked to tinker with things. I like to like build things, put stuff together on my own. And then so like at age 3, I think my parents gave me my like first ever Lego set, and then that was like the coolest thing ever because like you get to really like see firsthand. Okay, there's like a bunch of like random bricks, but I can like somehow find a way to piece it together and make this dump truck, right? And every kid loves dump trucks, so like that's like a super exciting thing. And I think that passion kind of just kept going, and then eventually when I got old enough and I had the opportunity to participate in robotics, that was like a pretty clear and easy avenue to head down because it's just like basically adult Legos, right? You still basically build random pieces of metal with some screws and bolts and stuff, and you can piece together something that is functioning. So that's really exciting. So I think that really is more or less the story behind how that happened.
Yeah, earlier you mentioned you had some involvement in the FTC team High Definition. What was your experience with them in FTC?
Yeah, so I was one of the founders. I was also one of the co-captains. So my job was really to kind of facilitate the overall team in a lot of ways, but even more so on like the hardware, software, the robot development side was mostly what my area was. So I spent a lot of time just like making sure our robots are ready, right? I'm sure everyone knows the grind and the overall like experience that like, oh, like inter leagues finish, you qualify for states, hopefully. Okay, now we're thinking about how we're going to rebuild and then maybe you qualify for worlds and that whole thing. It's like a never ending process, right? And then the off season, you like recruit people, you train these people. So there's like an ongoing process, year long, really figuring out, okay, how can we advance our team even farther to achieve greater things?
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like you put in a lot of work and effort. Are there any memorable moments for you when you were doing FTC?
Yeah, 100%. So my first season ever was sophomore year of high school. So I did Skystone, and I thought that was like super cool because it's like again like Legos but big in robotics, right? That's awesome. I think I really made good use of that time, and I learned a lot. I think ramping up, and then I was pretty happy with the final robot that I had put together. So we qualified for Worlds that year. We were like one of the only teams that had like the 5 stone auto. Like I was super excited, and then COVID hit, and it's like okay, yeah, whatever. But so I do think like my whole first journey also on top of it not being quite that long is also very unique because we had the ultimate goal season that's completely remote. All the judging on Zoom and all that was like a pretty unique experience. But fast forward to I think senior year for me, Freight Frenzy, we make it to Worlds. We like are in like eliminations. We uh win our first bracket. We probably could have made it even farther. But I think really being able to compete on that stage and also not only that, but make it past the first like semifinals, I think was really exciting because like I mean that's kind of the dream, right? Like that's there's only so much farther you can go beyond that point. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, so now getting into the main topic of today's speaker series, how to start your own robotics startup by turning your idea into a product. How did you first come up with the idea of starting BWT Link?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we talk about how my first season was Skystone, and then for people that don't know, the like fundamentals behind that game is you have these oversized Lego blocks. They have like really poor tolerances. So they don't actually stack as well as you want them to. But also just basic physics, the higher you stack it, the more likely it is to like wobble and teeter and stuff like that. So I think it was in like December of that year, so we were like at interleagues. There was this video that the team posted that was like like rip seven stack tower falls over, and like for a while at that point, like seven stack I guess was not as common. So like it was a pretty big deal, and like got like 2,000 views or something on the video, but that's not as important as the fact that like I was also operator for that, and it was like very much so me and my like co-drivers like fault ish that happened, right? So it's like devastating. You're like, oh, or like so we're gonna win this game, and then oh, we lost this game. You know, like it's like actually your dreams crashing and falling, just like the stack of blocks was. So that was like really the big thing. Is like okay, like these linear slides, I think everyone used to use like Long Robotics or Misumi slides, right? And it's like these are great, but it's not really necessarily tailored to what you want to have inside like competitive robotics, where you need like finer movements, especially that year. You kind of want tolerances to be as little as possible because when you stack like five stages of slides together, it's really going to compound a lot, right? So that was kind of like the inception of that idea, saying like, hey, how can I go to the drawing board and really refine this to be the best version of what I think I want in a drawer slide and linear slide for competitive robotics. So that was really the inception. And then I was really lucky because COVID, that I had a lot of time on my hands at home. So it was like really refining the design, getting everything put together and like figured out before like the end of junior year. Yeah.
Yeah, so of course, I know starting a business must be very challenging. So like, how did you build your business? What are some like the challenges you faced, and how did you like persevere, get through them?
Yeah, also another really good question. I feel like I'm very lucky because my mom is in business, like she does this for a living. So I have someone that's like right there that's very readily available and supportive and able to like basically hold my hand through this whole process because it is a very difficult process, right? If it was just up to me, I'd probably have a really hard time if like I was even able to get it running, but because she's there to like help me, it was like quite a seamless process for the most part. So yeah, I mean, I didn't run into that many like roadblocks per se through like getting the business up and running because of that, which again is just like speaking to like some luck on my side. But that doesn't mean in any capacity that like there's no like rough spots or like challenges along the way, right? Even like the development process, you like think something's going to work out really well and then it doesn't play out as you expect it to, right? There's a whole lot of back and forth even beforehand, like, okay, I feel like I have this first refined design figured out. So now I have to go out and reach out to people to manufacture this, right? That was a whole process. Again, if it wasn't for my mom, I feel like it'd be even harder, but she was able to again show me the ropes. But okay, so we find a manufacturer, they're like, okay, sure, we can do this. And then they'll like give you a couple samples and the samples come back and you think they're okay or you think they're bad, right? Then you have to go through the whole like re-innovation and like constant like engineering loop to like refine it until it gets to where you want. And even after like the samples turned out really well, right? And then you actually take it to market, you start saying, hey, like, oh, FTC, look, I have these slides. I want to sell them. Then it's like a whole thing of like, how do you get your name out there? Right? I think like a lot of people nowadays, I got lucky also in the sense that I feel like when I was in the program, there's less students jumping out and starting companies and selling things. But now it seems like everyone's doing it, right? So now you have to really like break down what is your niche? How do I separate myself from the whole entire market? Because if it's not noticeable enough of a difference, then you probably are not going to have a really good opportunity, to be quite frank, right? But like, okay, so I feel like I had a good enough opportunity, but let's just say I got my name out there. A lot of people are going to be like, hey, like, what's the point? Like, this is like, there's already other alternatives, and your stuff is a little more expensive and it's not proven, not a whole lot of people trust you. That's like just innovation in general, right? So that's like normal challenges that you would have to deal with. But then you like kind of like gain some traction. People are like starting to buy your stuff. And then there's after like extensive stress testing, because I can only test my stuff so much, right? But then like when multiple people, teams from all over the place are getting them and using them in ways that I never imagined them to be used for, now you're running into more issues, right? There's a whole thing with like, oh, the T screws being aluminum and a few other end stops breaking and stuff like that, right? So now it's like, okay, shoot, there's more things that I need to like fix and refine. So it's like this constant like reinforcement loop of improvement, right? And that's normal. I think that's very normal. You have to deal with the kinks and the bumps in the road, right? And I think those are pretty typical challenges that I faced. But I don't know. Sometimes like putting it into words, looking back as a reflection, it's harder to know these things when you're like going into it for the first time.
Yeah, so you mentioned that it was a very long iterative process of like identifying new areas that can be improved and then finding like improvements for those. How long did it take for the entire process?
Yeah, so the design of everything started like what is it? Spring-ish of 2020, right? So like spring semester of my sophomore year. So that's when it started. And then like I said, a lot of time through COVID was invested in this. So I guess probably more time then. But if you take a step back and look at the overall timeline, it was a lot of, okay, start spring semester sophomore year. I don't think we had what I feel like as confident as I've ever been about this first site until like last fall, 2024, like November, October-ish. That's when we like found a way to like by default put zinc aluminum T screws onto the slides, which is like eliminating what sounded like everyone's last gripe with what's going on, right? And I feel like we have that out there. We introduced like an upgradable option to have steel if you want even more robust options. And then from then on, I feel like I have not heard of any other problems that people have had yet. And I feel like that is for now the more comfortable moment that we're at, right? But I mean, like, it's hard to say, right? Because there's a chance like next week someone's going to email me and say, "Hey, there's a problem," and like there's a problem, right? So there's always something better to do, right? I think that's the beauty of engineering, but also kind of the annoyance of engineering is like you never have a truly finished product. You could probably have asked me 2 years ago saying like, "Hey, how long was this process?" And I want to say, "Yeah, like we're feeling pretty good about it now," right? But then someone stress tests it and finds another issue, so then it's my job to make sure that we can improve on this product even more so that we can get it even closer to what you want, the customer wants, and myself am happy with as a product to be selling.
So, you mentioned that your mom was a huge support for you during this entire process. What were some of the other like kind of leading figures that supported you throughout this entire process? And also financially, how did you find funding for this? I know it was COVID. It must have been very hard to reach out to people, especially since everything had to be done online. There's no real face-to-face contact. So, how did you like find support for this? How did you find funding?
Yeah, that's also a really good question. I think a lot of these answers, my experience is probably like taking some shortcuts, if I'm honest, right? So I mentioned like my mom being really supportive and helpful in the business aspect, but my dad was also the head coach for high definition, right? So like it was kind of like a two-man team. Him and I like did a lot of the heavy lifting for like our design for engineering, hardware, software, and stuff like that, right? So like that's kind of really what my support structure and even financial structure kind of looked like. It was really just me trying to like drive this idea home with like heavy amounts of support from my parents, which I'm like super grateful and thankful for, right? So it was pretty much at least at the inception when this whole thing happened, it's like, hey, I want to do this. My parents like, okay, let's do it. So I like pulled some money together. My parents also helped me in that aspect, and we just like made this happen in hopes that like in the long term, like those are not made to like get rich off of, right? Like you're not in this business effort to like make the big bucks, but you're here to like pursue a dream, right? Like not like 50 years down the line, this is what I'm retiring off of dream, but like this is just like a passion that I have, my parents have in doing, right? I think if you're in it for the love of the game, then it's all worth it in the end. And hopefully on the side, you're like not completely in the red, right? That's kind of like the mindset that we went into it with. Um, yeah, so I think for the most part, that's kind of what it looks like. I think support wise and growing the whole thing is really difficult. So like that probably was and is anyone else's biggest challenges. Okay, I think I have a really good idea and I have a market. I'm going to take this to market. I'm going to sell it. But how do I get people to buy into my product, right? That's like a really difficult thing. I feel like there's no end all be all right answer for that. But I feel like throughout my years in FTC specifically, I think my team under like my leadership had enough influence, more or less. Like there's enough eyes on what we're doing. People like know about us and care about us. And I feel like I was pretty active in the community back then. So like I talked to a lot of people. I like whenever we went to Worlds, like everyone in some capacity would be like, "Oh, you're Eric. Like that's great. Like we talked before." And it's like that, like meeting for the first time, put like a face to the name, but like we've communicated before, and I feel like it's really important to have in some capacity that network and a little bit of that like connection with people, because when you do have this idea, then you're like, "Hey, design this. We'll love to have you test it," right? So especially like in the state of Washington, it was really close to a couple teams, so I obviously use my own slides for my design, but at the same time, I'd like, hey, would you want to try these out and let me know what you feel about it? And then eventually you kind of just grow from there by like word of mouth, and you slowly like take that next step. And then once the floodgates kind of open, it like snowballs a lot, which is nice. But I think really getting that first step in the door is probably the hardest step.
Yeah, so our team is actually taking a look at BWTlink's website, and we saw that you guys have launched a design challenge all about reverse engineering this year, and you've been holding several similar competitions last few years. So, what inspired you to create these competitions? What's your like purpose for these?
Yeah, so I guess like a little bit of my gripe, I think, with my experience in FTC is if you look at a lot of like the award categories, especially like design award, right? It like talks about how do you incorporate industry like engineering concepts and principles and design apparatuses into your design, right? And I feel like there's definitely a fair share of like thought put into that. There's innovation and stuff done in FTC, but I feel like there's always this fear, if not a trend, in which like by the time it's interleagues, Washington State's also really unique because we're like really early in the competition cycle, right? So we're like done with worlds and done qualifying for worlds before people have had their like regional competitions in a lot of other places. So like in our spot, right, there's definitely a lot more eyes also because like if we prove a concept works, we're going to slowly see a lot of people say, hey, like that's a great idea. Let's try to do that also, right? I feel like there's a big shift towards this meta. People are going to rebuild towards that meta because they think, okay, great, I have established this meta to work, which is like great, right? But I feel like if you're in this like crowd mindset of working towards a meta, you're lacking a lot of innovation, right? So like that kind of like suppresses another aspect of what you're trying to do when you compete in first, right? So like I think that's really kind of the inspiration because like Freight Frenzy that year, I don't know how well you are aware of my design, but I was like the only one in the entire world that like decided to use a claw because I feel like there was enough reasons that this claw proved useful compared to everyone else. And like we make it to Worlds. I think we had a semi-consistent 7-8 cycle auto, but like at the end, our alliance captain was like, just use the five. You can guarantee the five will work every single time. Just take the points and run with it. So that's what we did. But so we're proving that we have this working. And even then, people will still like pull you over and be like, oh, like, why would you do this? This doesn't make any sense. You should have just done this, and this, right? So like that was kind of my position on this, right? So like after graduating, I feel like I wanted to create more opportunities for people. So like in the off season, you can kind of take a step back away from your like designing for the meta, optimizing for this challenge, and be able to more so think about how do I incorporate real world engineering principles into this, right? Because like I'm not really faulting people for following the meta. I feel like there's a lot of reason to do it because like if it works, it works, right? Don't reinvent the wheel. And the season's really grindy, it's really rushed. You don't have that much time, right? So you don't really have the time to like go back to the drawing board, think, be like, how do I want to do this time, right? If everything's already like shown and showcased and tried and true, you kind of want to go with it, which I think is very valid. Um, and because you don't have time, like, okay, if you run into an issue with something, right? Okay, like my claw doesn't open as I want it. Okay, what I'm going to do? I'm just going to slap a servo on there, right? It's going to work, but it's also going to be kind of a struggle because you don't really consider like the direct consequences that exist off of that, right? If I put a servo on this claw, but this claw also has to extend like 30 inches out, that means I have to run a super long wire all the way out there for the servo. And also means whatever I'm lifting this entire arm with needs to have that much more torque and power because the servo weighs a lot, right? And then you have the whole like lever physics principle. The farther away it is, the even more force that you need, right? So like you like direct consequences. I feel like when you like really go into the real world, you realize, okay, like that's not a viable solution to just like close your eyes, slap the motor on there, and be okay with it, right? So like the whole idea is like again like taking a step back, really incorporating these principles that like you kind of don't think about a lot of time, and to give students like an opportunity to really showcase their creativity in incorporating these principles, right? I think reverse engineering this year was pretty special because it's a really important concept in the world of design, right? Like you can only know so much as like a high schooler, middle schooler in robotics, but if I pull like 30 different Microsoft engineers who have like decades on decades of experience into in some, they're going to be able to put together something really cool, right? And then if you can go in and really understand what this design is, how it works, how did they get it to be so simple and whatnot? You can learn a lot from that and hopefully take that with you to apply to other things, right? So that was like kind of the thought process. Like each of them usually are pretty um like meticulous when we decide what the challenge is to hopefully give another opportunity to think about what we're trying to do, right? Like last year, let me think. Sorry, I'm like a little removed from the community, so I'm trying to
I
like
believe
remember what it was.
I believe last year was the strung up claw.
Yeah. So that's what we kind of talked about with like the servo. If you slap it on there, it's whatnot. But then the whole thing, I think the first year was like the idea of like conserving like your slide length, right? So like if you have like a vertical slide here, you put the claw here, and you're lifting upwards. I think for the power play cones, right? You're losing like this whole stroke length, which is like kind of silly in my opinion, right? So you have a really good way to like be able when you like lift up that this claw also travels with it. That's pretty nice because you get to use this entire like 12-inch distance that you already have on your robot that you're not using otherwise, right? So like these are things that I feel like it's worth thinking about because if you can make this happen, then you don't have to add a whole nother segment, which is like a whole nother amount of weight and like calculations and things you have to think about. So that's kind of like what the overall philosophy behind that is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, moving a little away from BWTlink, I see a lot of people in my school or on other teams who ask like, I really love robotics. I really want to keep doing this, but they don't know how to really apply it in the real world. So I was just wondering, now that you're in your third year of college, are there any like robotics clubs, programs, or organizations that you're involved in or considering being involved in?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like the nice thing about especially the last like 5 to 10 years, right? It's like there's like a really big push for like engineering and like technical clubs and activities, right? So like I've talked to my cousin a lot. She's like a couple quite a bit older than me, I'll say, right? And then like she went to UW back in her day, and there was like some opportunity, but I feel like there's only a couple. Like you can do like this one robotics club or this one coding club, and that's the only option you have, right? But if you now go to like UW campus, there's like hundreds probably of anything you want to do. Do you want to do underwater robotics? Do you want to do like a robot that can kick a soccer ball around? They have like combat robotics. Like there's a lot of different things that you can do that fits your needs or like your desires and your interests, right? Like right now at Berkeley, I'm part of the combat robotics team. So like, build a robot, kill all the robots. Like that can be pretty fun. But like there's also like so many other options that are available for you to like decide what you want to do, right? So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I guess really just follow your heart, and then I feel like if you really are invested and in love with the idea of it, you'll find your own niche, and then you'll pave your own path through that.
Yeah. So yeah, this is like I feel like in the last several years, robotics has just really picked up like worldwide. So no matter like what program anybody takes, is there any advice that you have for any students that want to pursue engineering or robotics in their future?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that old yet, so I don't have that much experience under my belt. I'm kind of just figuring it out and learning as I go as well. But I think again, it's just like follow your dreams. I know that sounds super cliche, but I think if you're interested in something, you'll be 10 times that more likely to like, hit the ground running and learn and grow and advance in the ways that you will naturally want to advance and because you're good doing something you enjoy, right? And then at the same time, just like, try to incorporate other thoughts, I think, other like veins of thought and thinking because I think it's really easy to like be like, okay, I've always designed things this way and I think it's really good. But if you're in a club, you're going to have like 30 other people thinking different ways, and there's a really real chance that someone can teach you something new and open like a whole new can of worms for you, like explore something else, right? And then like just as like a throwaway joke, kind of not really, but also like, go outside, I feel like there's always that run long joke about like touching grass, but I think that's really valid, right? If you're like forever stuck in the world of engineering, kind of lose track of like a lot of other things in life. So like, don't be scared to take breaks. Like your robot's not going anywhere, hopefully. And then when you have a fresh mind to come back and really improve and work on it, you'll probably be more productive than you were if you're grinding for like 20 hours straight.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about your past and your present. I'm just wondering, like, what are some of your future plans? Where are you gonna go from, like, tomorrow or into the futures?
Yeah, this is also a good question. Like I said, kind of just figuring it out also. Going into my last year of college, so it's like a really big period of gotta figure it out, and that's kind of scared to think about. But I mean, I think that's a part of life, right? So, really getting into some preliminary robotics research. I think I'm excited to see what that actually looks like because pretty new to that subject in general. So, really excited to see where that takes me. And then, yeah, kind of recruiting for jobs because again, after you graduate, kind of have to find a job. But I don't know. We'll see where life takes you from there.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's been great having you, Eric. Thank you for taking your time to talk with us and inspiring us with your story.